Master, my fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. It is my pleasure this evening to share with you a monologue from what I consider one of the most quintessential mafia movies of all time. Not only do I love the movie for its cast, most notably Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci, amongst others, but I have to say, just a little bit it reminds me of home. I also find it to be an eminently quotable movie, and tonight I'm going to share with you what I consider the second most famous monologue from the movie. The most famous I consider the, what am I, funny or something? Funny like a clown, Joe Pesci moment. Instead I'm going to start with the opening scene of Henry Hill describing his entree into the world of organized crime. Now, despite the fact that the manual for this speech actually asks that you don't make eye contact, because typically characters don't break what in theater we call the fourth wall, this monologue is in fact designed as Henry Hill speaking directly to the audience, and so I will do so as well this evening. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. To me, being a gangster was better than being President of the United States. Even before I first wandered into the cab stand for an after-school job, I knew I wanted to be part of them. It was there I knew I belonged. To me, it meant being somebody in a neighborhood full of nobodies. They weren't like anybody else. I mean, they did whatever they wanted. They double parked in front of a hydrant and nobody ever gave them a ticket. And on summer nights when they were up late playing cards, nobody ever called the cops. Tootie Cicero. Tootie ran the cab stand at La Bella Vista Pizzeria and a few other places for his brother Paul, who was the boss over everybody in the neighborhood. Paulie might have moved slow, but it was only because he didn't have to move for nobody. At first, my parents loved that I found a job across the street. My father, who was Irish, was sent to work at the age of 11, and he liked that I got myself a job. He always said American kids were spoiled and lazy. And my mother was happy after she found out that Varios came from the same part of Sicily she did. To her, this was the answer to her prayers. I was the luckiest kid in the world. I could go anywhere. I could do anything. I knew everybody, and everybody knew me. But it wasn't too long before my parents changed their minds. For them, the cab stand was supposed to be a part-time job, but for me, it was full-time. People like my father could never understand, but I was part of something. I belonged. I was treated like a grown-up, and every day I was learning to score. $1 here and $1 there. My father was always pissed off. He was pissed off he had to work so hard. He was pissed off my brother Mike was in a wheelchair. He was pissed off he made lousy money. He was pissed off that there was 7 of us living in a tiny house. But after a while, he was mostly pissed that I was hanging around the cab stand. He said they were bums, and that I was a bum. He said I was going to get in trouble. I used to say I was only running errands after school, but he knew better. He knew what went on in the cab stand, and every once in a while, usually after he got his load on, I had to take a beating. But by then, I didn't care. No matter how many beatings I took, I wouldn't listen to what he said. I don't even think I heard him. The way I saw it, everybody's got to take a beating sometime. And that was it. Soon, no more letters from truant's officers, no more letters from school. In fact, no more letters from anybody. In fact, my mother had to go down to the post office and complain after a couple of weeks. I mean, how could I go back to school after all that? Pledge allegiance to the flag and sit through good government bull? Hundreds of guys depended on Paulie, and he got a piece of everything they made. It was tribute, just like in the old country, except they were doing it here in America. All they got from Paulie was protection from other guys looking to rip them off. That's what it was all about. That's what the FBI could never understand. What Paulie and the organization offered was protection for people who can't go to the cops. They're like the police department for wise guys. People looked at me differently. They knew I was somebody. I didn't have to wait online in the bakery on Sunday morning anymore for fresh bread. The owner, who I knew who I was with, he'd come out from around the corner, no matter how many people online were waiting. I was taken care of first. Our neighbors didn't park in our driveway anymore, even though we didn't have a car. At 13, I was making more money than most of the grown-ups in the neighborhood. I had more money than I could spend.